Hey, it's good to be back for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. This is Seth Mayo, curator of astronomy for the Lowman Planetarium at MOAS. And in this edition of the program, we will cover the dates of December 5th through December 11th. In this episode, we're going to talk a whole bunch about Mars and the Moon. We're going to start things off by talking about the Artemis 1 mission and update you on the Orion spacecraft that's been flying around the Moon lately. I'll show you what's gone on with that mission so far. Then we're going to look at the full moon in the middle of the week. And not only is there a full moon, there's also an occultation when the moon covers Mars in the sky in certain parts of Earth. So we'll talk about that, and hopefully you enjoy this in this edition of our Sky Tonight. As we watch the moon rise out of the east in its larger phases, we can talk about the Artemis 1 mission that is still going on right now from NASA to test this uncrewed Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle that will one day carry astronauts to the moon in later Artemis missions. If you've been following along with this mission already, you've probably seen some fantastic pictures from the Orion spacecraft as it journeyed from the Earth to the moon. Of course, there was an amazing launch that happened in the middle of November that we had a chance to capture from the Kennedy Space Center when that Space Launch System rocket finally made its first journey into space, lifting off in the early morning hours. To see that was quite spectacular. And the entire launch went really well, placing the vehicle into space above the Earth. Eventually, we see the deployment of the Orion capsule attached to the European Service Module, and eventually leaving Earth, we got some amazing views of Earth from the capsule from various mounted cameras. We can see it in various shots here. Eventually, about 6 days later, the capsule got to the moon, orbited really close, got within 80 miles of the surface, and captured some amazing views of the Earth kind of setting on the horizon of the moon, views that eventually astronauts will see. Of course, this was uncrewed, so inside the capsule there was a mannequin and even a little Snoopy doll that was kind of floating around. And as that spacecraft got really close to the moon, it captured some close-up shots of the surface and then continued its way around the moon until making a large lunar retrograde orbit, getting as far as 268,000 miles, which eventually placed the Orion capsule in the record books as the farthest human-intended spacecraft away from Earth. At the time of that milestone, the Orion spacecraft was about 43,000 miles from the moon. It actually reached a distance from the moon of about 57,000 miles some days prior to that, and then continued its large retrograde orbit around the moon, which is pretty unique, capturing some amazing images of the Earth and moon in one shot. Some of these pictures are beautiful and awesome, and again, to think that people will see this one day from this vehicle is quite amazing. And on flight day 16, Orion left the distant retrograde orbit at the beginning of December for a journey that eventually will take it back to Earth. And that's what's happening right now at the time of this video. Orion is heading back to Earth for an eventual splashdown on Sunday, December 11th. So we're going to find out how the entire mission went by then, but so far things have gone very successfully. So hopefully that splashdown will go without a hitch, but it's exciting to see all of this play out in front of our eyes, and the images and the video are spectacular. So we'll keep you up to date on this and how it goes at the end of this mission, but it's fun to see exploration happening now, especially to our moon. Now, as we continue talking about the moon in our sky, there's so much going on with it right now. As we make our way to the evening of Wednesday, December 7th, and the early morning of Thursday, December 8th, we can expect a very large full moon. And the full moon at this time of year here in December is called the cold moon. And that makes sense, at least here in the northern hemisphere. Our colder temperatures are here for most of this part of the world. And for most people looking at the moon on this very night and this evening, it will be quite cold. Now, we're in Florida, so it's not as cold here, but of course our temperature has gone down a little bit as well. But what's great right now with the moon is that the moon is about to do something that's rather rare, especially when it's full, and especially when the planet Mars, which you can see in this view, is nearby. And what will be happening is that the moon will cover up Mars in certain locations. This is called a lunar occultation. Anytime you hear the word occultation, that is Latin for hidden. That's when an object in our sky covers up something else. And the moon covers up stars occasionally, planets. We can have other planets covering up stars and other objects. Occultations happen throughout our sky all the time. But not every occultation is as great as this one, especially when the moon is full and when Mars is actually at its closest approach to us at what is called opposition, which also occurs around this time, on the 8th. So Mars is actually opposite of the sun in the sky. So that's when we can see Mars all night long, and about when it's closest to us. That actually happened right at the beginning of December when it was about 50 million miles away. That is very close for Mars. And it hasn't been this close in about 2 years. Usually Mars goes through oppositions like this every 26 months, so it's a reoccurring thing, but we don't have it happen every single year. And since it's close to it, that means Mars is bigger and brighter in our sky. Not as big and as bright as it was in 2020, but it's still going to really shine. And having that with the large moon makes for a really great solar system view. And all of this is happening inside a great area of stars. What we're finding here is the constellation of Taurus the Bull. Turn on the outline of Taurus, and you can see that the moon and Mars are in the horns of Taurus right now. And just for reference, just above it is the famous Pleiades star cluster you can find right there. So we have a full moon, we have an opposition of Mars, and then eventually we'll have the occultation happen when the moon slides over Mars in certain parts of the world. And this map from inthesky.org is a useful tool understanding where you can see this occultation. You can't see it from every spot on Earth because it depends on the angle that you're looking at these two objects in the sky. And there's something called parallax. So when you're looking at an object from one side of the Earth versus another, an object can kind of be in a different spot at the same time. And so you have to be in the right place and the right time to see this. And for a good portion of the United States, according to this map, this occultation can be seen. Unfortunately for us here in Florida and the Southeast United States, and even much of the East Coast, we cannot see that. Mars and the moon will get really close, but the moon will not cover up the planet. So an occultation won't happen. It'll just be a close conjunction between these two objects. Of course, we have other areas like Greenland and Iceland and even Western Europe can see it as well. It just depends on the time. So if you're farther east over here, you're going to see it really early in your morning on Thursday, December 8th. So this will be after midnight. For some of these folks, it starts around the 2 in the morning time frame. And then for others, because of time zones, as we move to the west here, it will happen earlier in the evening and actually before midnight on this side of the Earth, especially in North America. So if you're on the West Coast, way over here, you're gonna see it right after sunset in the early evening. So you do have to anticipate your time zone and when this will occur. The farther west you are, the earlier in the evening it will happen on the 7th, and the farther east you are, the later on the 7th, or even the early morning of the 8th on Thursday morning. That's when it will occur. So you do have to kind of wait out for that. And I'll show you in a couple spots what this will look like. So heading back to Solarium, we have it situated here in Florida where our museum lies here, and we actually have to scale the moon down to its actual size so the correct angular diameter is being displayed here. And I will tell you, Solarium is a tool we use all the time in this program. This is going to be the best way to understand what is happening and to time things out in your specific location. So this may be the easiest way to do it. If you have Solarium on your computer or the web-based version or even a version on your phone, use that to predict when you'll find this occultation, or at least close approach between Mars and the moon. So I'm actually going to target the moon here, zoom in. So this is still about 6:43 local time on the 7th here in Florida. And we can speed up time here. We can watch as the moon and Mars get closer and closer to each other. And as we do so, we're in the 7 o'clock hour. Now it's 8 o'clock local time here in Florida, getting into about 9 o'clock here. And eventually by about 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's when we see Mars and the moon really close. And I'm definitely going to capture this with a telescope if it's clear. To see these two objects so close is always a treat. And again, Mars is at opposition, so it's biggest and brightest and pretty close to Earth than it usually is, and the moon is full at the same time as well. So the moon is at opposition too. So both of these objects are opposite of the sun, and they can be seen all night long. And so for us, we don't have that occultation. You'll see that the moon and Mars will kind of just slide past each other, and it will continue to do so until 11 o'clock, and then by midnight, it will kind of move even farther away. And what you'll see is that Mars will kind of swoop past the moon in sort of a different direction through the night as the Earth kind of overtakes Mars in its orbit. So you'll kind of see that kind of moving back and forth a little bit if you watch long enough. That's kind of neat to see. Now, if we change our location a little more west and north here in the United States, I've actually set our location to Colorado, things are going to look a little different. This is something that's going to be quite amazing here. So now this is about 7:26 local time in Colorado in the evening here. In these locations, you can actually see Mars will fall past the moon here. The moon will cover up Mars, and there's the occultation. Local time there around 7:45. And then you'll lose Mars for a little bit here, and so it will disappear behind the moon until later on, most likely in the 8 o'clock and actually 9 o'clock hour is when it will reappear on the other side of the moon. For those who take lunar and planetary photography, you're going to get some really cool shots of this. And again, if you're more to the west side of the United States, you're going to see this even earlier in the evening. So definitely check that map on inthesky.org or elsewhere, or use Stellarium to kind of figure out when to look for this if you're in the right location for this occultation. But even if you're not, just seeing the moon and Mars really close is extra special. And along with a full moon, an opposition of Mars, and this occultation happening at the same time, it really makes you appreciate the solar system and all the lineups that occur and all of these wonderful places that you can explore on your own just by looking up in the sky at the right time. Hey, that's it for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're in Daytona Beach, please stop by the Museum of Arts and Sciences and check out our show in our Lowman Planetarium. We're running programs every day, so please check out our website for more information and tune into our various social media channels where we're posting some amazing content from around the museum. We hope to see you back here again. I want to say happy lunar and Mars viewing, and of course, happy stargazing.